7:34 by my clock, so let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Just a couple of technical things before we get started with our program. I'd like to ask everybody or suggest that you put your Zoom view on speaker view, because that will work better, I think, when we have our speakers speaking. So that's, if you look in the upper right hand of your screen, if you scroll over that, a little box that says view comes up. And if you look at your choices, one's gallery view and one's speaker view, and we recommend speaker view. And then the other thing is, after some general comments by our speakers, we will invite questions from the audience. And to do that, we'd like you to submit your questions in the chat function. And if you send them to the person, if you click on the arrow down at the bottom in the chat, where you have a choice of people to chat to, Katie from Neighbors Link is called questions. So if you would send your question to questions, Katie will be collecting them. And then a little bit later, we'll get to the questions. And oh, and lastly, and if you have something more you'd like to share with our audience that you don't think can be encapsulated in a question, you can also chat that to the questions box and let Katie know that if it's possible, if time permits, you'd like to say a few words. You could indicate what it's about, maybe, or something like that, and we'll try and make time to do that too, because that would be great. We would love to have it be more interactive, and Zoom is a little bit limiting that way. So we're hoping that'll work. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen Williamson, who's with Films on Purpose, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. Welcome everyone to tonight's discussion. This program is made possible in part by a grant from Westchester Community Foundation. Thank you. Films on Purpose is thrilled to be once again partnering with Neighbors Link, our oldest partner. This is our 4th event together. In fact, we were supposed to screen Vate, amores almost a year ago and had to cancel because of the lockdown. Speaking of partnerships, I want to thank our newest partner, PCTV, for streaming our films. And to announce our next partnership with FCWC, the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County, with whom we will be showing a trio of films about food and the environment. Seed, The Untold Story, Queen of the Sun, What Are the Bees Telling Us, and Modified. Please watch your inbox and our website for more information. And now I'm so happy to introduce our panel of speakers. First is Arturo Gonzalez Villasenor. He is the filmmaker who met Las Patrones, the women who fed the immigrants riding atop the beast, the train making its way to the United States, and decided to turn their story into a documentary. Arturo is joining us from Mexico. Welcome, Arturo.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Juan Pablo Patino is an immigrant from Ecuador who rode atop the beast on his journey to the United States. We look forward to hearing more of your story. Welcome, Juan Pablo.
You're welcome, Kathleen.
And Liz Mastropalo, the managing attorney of Neighbors Link Community Law Practice, provides direct legal assistance to immigrants throughout the Hudson Valley. Welcome and thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much.
And finally, Carola Otero Bracco, Executive Director of Neighbors Link, who will be joining a Films on Purpose panel for the 4th time. As a first-generation American born of immigrant parents from Bolivia, Carola understands the challenges that accompany the immigrant experience in America and is dedicated to inspiring healthy integration in the community through her work with Neighbors Link. Thank you, Carola, for joining us again.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks so much for the partnership with Films on Purpose.
So glad. I will first ask a few questions of our panelists, and then we will open it up to a general Q&A. So please put your questions into chat, and Katie Graves AB from Neighbors Link will conduct the Q&A. Arturo, thank you so much for your beautiful film. I understand that you were not yet a filmmaker when you met Las Patrones, but were inspired to make a film about them. Can you tell us more about that? And he has to, you have to unmute.
Hola, voy
Hola.
a tratar de decirlo en pocas palabras en español. Efectivamente, yo no era cineasta, ni pretendía serlo, y creo que la historia de estas mujeres fue lo que me motivó a querer contar una historia que pudiera describir la pasión y las ganas con la que ellas lo hacían todos los días.
Juan Pablo, ¿tú quieres traducir o quieres que...?
Me encantaría que usted lo hiciera, señora.
Okay, sure.
Encantado de la vida.
In reality, I was not familiar with filmmaking, but I was so moved by these women and by their passion and their efforts that I had to tell this story.
Thank you. It's such a beautiful story. And can you tell us more about the women? Can you tell us if they're still doing this work? And can you tell us how they managed to do so much work with so little?
Sí, cuando nosotros llegamos y las conocimos, eran un grupo de 25 personas, 25 mujeres, y poco a poco ellas fueron entendiendo cómo funcionaba el poder convivir y el poder trabajar con migrantes que eran de alguna forma ilegales o no tenían papeles y que ellas les estaban brindando su ayuda. Entonces fue una serie de aprendizajes que ellas han tenido desde hace 25 años que las ha hecho hasta el día de hoy convertirse en mujeres que son defensoras de los derechos de los migrantes.
Arturo, por favor, puedo decir un poco. We first met these 25 women, and little by little, they began to understand how important it was for them to play an important role in helping undocumented people, and that it was really their effort that was propelling forward the journey of these undocumented people.
Son mujeres que se enfrentan a dos tipos de situaciones totalmente adversas para ellas. La primera es el peligro que representa al alimentar a migrantes que van arriba de un tren de carga. Es un tren bastante peligroso y la velocidad del tren la dicta el maquinista. Entonces hay trenes que pueden pasar con una velocidad muy fuerte, muy baja, pero eso representa peligro tanto para el migrante como para las mujeres.
One of the situations that the women had to deal with was the incredible danger that they were facing as they tried to feed people on the train, and that the trains were going at an incredibly fast pace, and this was very dangerous for them.
Y la segunda es las barreras que ellas como mujeres han roto durante todos estos años, que tiene que ver precisamente con el machismo, con las obligaciones domésticas que de alguna forma son impuestas por el hombre hacia la mujer, y ellas han sobrepasado la forma en la que antes se tenía concebido cómo era el trabajo de una mujer, y ahora ellas son respetadas inclusive no solo por sus parejas, sino por todos los miembros de su familia y del pueblo. Y eso es algo muy loable.
A second barrier that the women faced and had to overcome was the machismo in their culture and in their community, and the obligations that were forced on them by the men in their lives, and they had to overcome this stereotypical role. And they did eventually, they were able to overcome that role and really gain the respect of the people in their community, both men and women.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arturo. I know that, Juan Pablo, that you had a long and difficult experience, including riding on the Beast on the train. And I was hoping that you could tell us more about that.
Yes, of course, a pleasure to me to answer your question. Yeah, that happened almost 20 years ago. One of my trips, because I make 5 to get
Oh,
here.
wow.
So, and one of my trips, I get the opportunity to ride and the beast, or they call them train of the dead. It's have many names. And yes, it's so incredible because it's a long train with at least 45, 50 people on top of the train. Runs sometimes slow, sometimes fast. Like Arturo says, it's true. And the timing doesn't have a time exactly. So you have to stay for a long time. I waited. I think it's almost 8 hours waiting until the trains start in the road. And that time when that came, I didn't know the patronas. So used to be only a few people who feed it, but some people in the train, but none like a institutional, like the patronas do not have any organization yet. So it's a few people just do it because they do, but no, maybe the church or something. And yeah, we expose to the rain, to the wind, high speed. People sometimes sleep, fail. I hear a lot of histories about that. Thanks God, nothing happened to me. I'm so young when that kind of thing happened, and it is what it is. You come in with we expect a lot of things. I am the first generation, my family here, so I come in with I know it's dangerous, but you come in with a huge respect about what is the change in your life, how they change, and maybe you can do something better, because we come from the poor area in my country. So that's why I think the people who ride the trains try to change the life. So this is the idea. No matter what happened, just try it. This is the yes. So that's why I get a nice experience. I can say yes, I do. It's a long time, but still I remember like yesterday.
Yeah.
So yes, Kathleen, this is.
Yes. Oh, so one of the questions, and you just alluded to it a little bit, that people did help you. It wasn't Las Patrones, but there were people out there who did help along the way a little bit.
Yes, it is a people. Because when I can't remember exactly the towns you pass in the train, but there's a people. I think it's from the church or from I never know, because when I came with a coyote guy, with a guy who helped you to cross. So pretty much you come in completely blind. You don't know where you are and who is help you. Just you receive a help, and it's very. It's very help, because you have hungry, thirsty, and somebody feed it and give it some hope.
Right.
So you start to believe in people when that kind of thing happen.
Yes.
That's just the thing, because people who you never saw in your life can do something good for you. So it's and even can expect something back. So that is the thing. This is amazing, and this is amazing. When I see the film, I can't believe how the patronas can support her, who bring the people, who bring the food, who help. So I saw the film, and I'm so shocked. I'm say how they do it, how can do it. So it's amazing. It's amazing, women.
It's amazing, and Thank God. that they-
Yeah, thanks God exist. So
Yes.
many people coming every day. Like I'm saying, it's 45 people in each wagon of the train, on top, on the sides, and this long. I don't know how many came in complete train. Maybe 500, 400. I don't even know.
And you said that you did the journey 5 times.
Yes.
And was it because you were unsuccessful in getting in the first 4 times?
Yes, I get in a problems, and when I cross the border, immigration from Mexican, they get me, and they take me back from Ecuador when I'm so close. So they stop me and they get me in the control, and because I'm started that the trip, and I pay a lot of money for. Years ago, 14,000, it was a lot of money, and so when I pay that, I can't stop it. I have to come, no matter what happened. I have to come. So and the first time when I did that, then the second time I take a trip from Bolivia, from Peru, then from Brazil, and pretty much from all South America. So one back and forth until my 5th time I finally crossed after a year of the back and forth. So
And
that's,
then how long before you came to New York? Did you come to New York right away?
yeah, I came from New York. I came from Ecuador to New York to Tarrytown area.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I moved for Asinen, Peekskill, and then Fishkill. So I'm moving different places
Right.
until I get. But yes, it's something. It's an adventure.
It's adventure.
It's an adventure, and pretty much, yeah, I did a part of my American dream, and I thanks God I bought in a little house here, and I get in a little land. I have my own company, so I'm okay so far. I'm pretty feel okay with it. Things happen. I'm so glad with this country, and I'm so thank you about the people that I have meet in here. Wonderful people, very wonderful people.
Well,
So yes.
we're so happy that you've come. I wanted to ask Carola, do you have a sense if people are still coming that way up on the train? Is that still a way that a lot of people are coming up through South America and Central America into the country?
Yes, we do. We do still know that people are coming on the Beast on this train. They're also coming other ways in which they're walking and getting to the border. But absolutely, we are seeing that that's still happening. You know, Liz can probably talk a little bit more of what's happening at the border and our immigration policies that have shifted so much that make it even more difficult for people to come into this country. And of course, a lot of that now has changed with the new policies that we're seeing enacted by the current administration. But certainly for years, we have experienced and witnessed people like Juan Pablo who come into this country with the hopes of being able to integrate into our community. And that's exactly the kind of work that we're doing at Neighbors Link to help those that are here integrate. One of the things Juan Pablo hasn't really talked too much about yet that I think was a big theme in the film was this issue of family separation and this very heartbreaking and cruel decision that all the folks on the train have to make to leave family behind, or they are in search of their family that's already in this country. And a system that we've had in place for so long that forces people to separate their families in that way, I think is extremely difficult and heartbreaking and makes it very difficult for immigrants in our country to integrate. So I think that that issue of family separation is a real important one.
Thank you. And so maybe Liz, you can talk a little bit about what is happening on the border and what do we anticipate changing with the new administration?
Sure. So currently, and largely under the last administration, there was the Remain in Mexico policy, whereby individuals who came to the southern border were not actually admitted to the United States. Under previous administrations, those individuals would be able to ask for a credible fear interview to say, I'm afraid to return to my country, and be able to be interviewed by an officer at the border. And if they were found to have a credible fear, they were admitted to the United States, and that they would continue with their asylum applications while living in the United States with their family. Under the previous administration, that didn't happen, and individuals were forced to remain in Mexico and were given notices to go to immigration court along the southern border. And what we found was that there were tens of thousands of individuals being stuck in essentially refugee camps along the southern border. And they were given a piece of paper that said when they needed to come back to court, and sometimes they would get to come back and sometimes there wouldn't, because there would be a lot of problems happening in those camps, right? There was human trafficking happening, people were being kidnapped, there was illnesses. And so for instance, by December of 2020, there was approximately 42,000 of these MPP cases, or Remain in Mexico cases, where individuals were staying in Mexico but having their hearings in the United States. And of those, only 638 of them were granted some form of relief in the United States. And so I think that just goes to show the issue of that policy. So now under the current administration, they've stopped registering new individuals for MPP, but there are still tens of thousands of people in Mexico, and the current administration hasn't yet resolved what they're going to do. So we're continuing to advocate that those individuals be allowed to come to the United States, present their cases, reunite with their family members in a safe place where they have access to immigration counsel, and where they can really avail themselves of due process.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing on that.
Sure.
Arturo, are you going to be still working on documentaries like this one, or will you be going on and doing some other project?
Ahora estoy trabajando en otro documental que no tiene que ver con el tema de migración, sino más bien con... el tema sigue siendo como social, que es el cine que a mí me interesa, y tiene que ver con el reencuentro de un viejo que fue partícipe en la Revolución Cubana, con una hija que dejó prácticamente cuando ella tenía 8 años, y en la película sucede este reencuentro después de casi 50 años, 40 años de no tener una relación formal, ¿no? O seria entre padre e hijo, y es un viaje que él emprende de la Ciudad de México a la parte de la zona selvática del sureste mexicano, donde ella vive ahí aislada.
So his next documentary will not be about immigration, but it will be a related film that is about an older gentleman who was involved in the revolution in Cuba. And I believe what he said was that it was also about the reunification of this older gentleman with one of his children, and the story, their story as in Mexico.
Okay, great. We're looking forward to that. Carola, I know that there is a lot of good news with the new administration, and one of them is that a friend of Neighbors Link is the new Homeland Security. I was so thrilled to find that out after hearing him speak at the Neighbors Link luncheon, and I was hoping that maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So Alejandro Mayorkas was formerly a deputy secretary at the Department of Homeland Security, and also served specifically within USCIS. And he has been involved in immigrant rights issues throughout the Washington, D.C. area. We've worked with him in the past on a few different cases and issues that have come up with the federal government. And so we're very excited to, he is going to be he is the first Latino to be serving in his post. We know that he has a tremendous interest in a fair and just system that, as he says it, that does protect our borders, but at the same time makes this country the welcoming country that we once were, and also allows people to integrate and also reunite with their family members. I think some of the things that are being implemented right away that include a reduction in the weaponization of ICE, for example, is something that is already facing some court battles, but I know that he will make some efforts to make sure that that moves forward. So we're real excited to have Ali Mayorkas in that position. I think he'll have a tough job ahead, and we look forward to working with him.
Great. That's great news. And Liz, can you tell us maybe some what you would anticipate the administration making some changes and what that could mean on the border? Do you have hopes anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are a lot of promising changes that have already been made. You know, it's only been what, 10 days, 15 days?
We've all got big hopes.
And we've already seen, you know, a number of executive actions that have come out under the Biden administration, fortifying DACA, providing some forms of relief for Venezuelans in the United States. You know, just a lot of really important decisions coming down. We also have seen that this administration has put out a bill which would provide a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented people living in the United States. And that's very promising. We are really hopeful that that bill can make its way through Congress and that we will be able to assist individuals who have been living here for a very long time obtain status and protection in the United States. At the border, I think that advocates are really hopeful that there will be an end to the MPP process and that people will be able to seek asylum as they should be under international and national law. And we're really just hoping that many of the things that were done under the last administration can kind of be unwound. And also we can make a real step forward for immigrants in both long-term and recent arrivals, making sure that their protections are in place for all of them.
Great. So I just wanted to remind everyone, if they have any questions, to put them into the chat. And I think that we thank you so much, everybody. And I think that Katie is now going to read some of the questions from the audience, and we'll proceed from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathleen. We have a lot of questions from people in the audience, so I'll try and get to a decent number of them. One for Arturo. People were wondering how you met the women, how you met La Patronus, and how long it took you to film the movie.
Las conocí por casualidad. Yo estaba trabajando mi tesis en un pueblo cercano donde viven ellas. Y el grupo con el que estaba trabajando, que eran de una radio comunitaria, me llevaron a conocerlas. Entonces fue casualidad. Y esto fue
I met the women by chance. I was in the area working on my thesis in a nearby village, and I was introduced to them by a group of people that I worked with.
Esto fue en el 2011 y tardamos 4 años en hacer la película. La
And
estrenamos.
this was in 2011, and it took us about 4 years to complete the documentary.
Thank you very much. For Juan Pablo, we had a question for you.
Yes.
Somebody was saying in the movie, in the film, they saw that there were lots of men traveling on the train, and they were wondering, in your experience, was it mostly men or were there women as well that were traveling?
It's mostly men, but it's mostly men, but have a woman with the little kids also.
With kids
Yeah,
on the train?
kids.
Wow.
Babies, like a month only. So
Oh,
it's something sad, but you can control it. Normally they come in on top. They can get a food like men's get easy because they wasn't the top, but it is women's too.
Okay,
With
thank
kids.
you.
Mhm.
And so there was another question for you. Somebody was asking when you got to New York, when you got to Westchester, what was your experience here? Were people welcoming? Were you able to find
My first
help and
experience.
assistance?
My first experience when I came in almost in winter, and I saw the trees without the leaves, and said, "Oh my God, some is burning here." But yeah, it's my first experience is because remember, it's a new place with no language, you don't know people, you don't know where you are, you completely mute, even don't know any place, don't know the money, and don't know anything. So it's a start in the beginning again. So, but thanks God that yes, I have help from the few people, neighbors, help me to find, and also I find jobs in the roads, like a people find, like organization, how you help some people. So same thing, but just we are in Salvation Army next to the McDonald's in Terrytown, so we used to step there. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Liz, we had a question about the immigration law in New York. Is anything changing with the new administration in regards to how things are working with the New York State for Office of New Americans, or anything specifically in New York that may be different now?
Yeah, so we're very lucky that we have the support of the New York State government in that they have promised to continue to support immigration legal services and provide opportunity centers for new Americans. So nothing significant has changed that I know of regarding immigration in New York State because immigration is a federal form of law. So generally, all of the policies have to be made at the federal level. But we are lucky in that we do have networks of a lot of immigrant advocates and organizations that can continue to advocate for individuals, at the federal level.
Thank you. Carola, I think you would be good to answer this. Juan Pablo was referring a bit to what when he arrived here, things that he was able to do in terms of getting assistance, and people were asking how can they make a difference in their own communities? What kind of work can they be involved with? What kind of work does Neighbors Link do? How can we be involved in our own communities in doing this?
Thank you for that, Katie. I'd love to answer that question. So just to give you a sense of the work that we do at Neighbors Link, the mission of our organization is to strengthen the whole community through the healthy integration of immigrants. So we offer a variety of programs that help the immigrant community, that help people like Juan Pablo when they first arrive here to get accustomed to the customs and culture of this country. So we teach English class, we run workforce education programs that include a hiring site for day labor men and women that are waiting for work. We have a parent education program. Liz, who's on the panel, is part of our immigration law practice at Neighbors Link. And we also do significant cultural awareness training. And in that training, we help those that we call longer term residents that might include police officers, people that work in the hospital, in our school districts. We provide cultural awareness training for them to help them understand the immigrant experience and why immigrants are compelled to leave their country. So part of our work also does include some significant advocacy work. So as Liz was talking about being in a state like New York, some of the things that we were able to do to make it more possible for immigrants to integrate and actually achieve their dreams include things like passing legislation for driver's license for undocumented immigrants. So not too long ago, undocumented immigrants in New York could not get a driver's license. Now they can. And that makes a significant difference in their ability to achieve their dreams and goals. We've also had a few other legislation that has passed, but I also want to mention a couple other things such as the census, even equity related to the vaccine for the COVID-19 vaccine, making sure that people can actually access the vaccine when we know that the way the system has been set up has been really geared towards people with more privilege. And so it's become very difficult for Black and brown people in our communities to access the vaccine as it becomes available. So when we talk about what kinds of things people can do, there's going to be some significant advocacy work as it relates to equity for the vaccine. There's going to be advocacy work that relates to the passing of the legislation some of the legislation that the Biden administration has put forward. For example, the immigration reform policies that he's recommending. You know, we have Chuck Schumer right here, who is now the Senate Majority Leader, and he's right here from New York. So we're going to have an incredible opportunity to be able to do advocacy work. So that's one piece of, I think, an important role that people can play. Also, I just have to go back to the whole idea behind the film of people feeding people. That's something that we've seen become such a critical issue this past year during COVID. And certainly Neighbors Link has played a real important role in feeding people during this time when they've lost their jobs, lost their incomes, and have and lost family members. So we do have over 400 volunteers. The Friends of Neighbors Link have played a critical role in volunteering at Neighbors Link and helping us as we work hard to feed people, and also our programming that continues online. So there are a variety of different things that people can do, and you can go to neighborslink.org to see some of that information. And we do have a lot of the Friends of Neighbors Link here with us today, and I really do want to thank them, not only for the partnership that helps this panel and films and the partnership with Films on Purpose, but also their incredible work as volunteers feeding people and their tremendous work in advocacy, getting legislation like the Green Light passed.
Thank you, Carola. We will put some information up at the very end of the program too. So if you want to get involved in advocacy work, if you want to get involved in volunteer work, we'll share some information if people want to be involved. We have more questions. For Arturo, people are wondering, how did the women pay for all this food? It seemed like a very big effort to put together all this food. How were they able to afford all of that?
Sí, es un poco, creo que la pregunta puede completar mucho la idea de Carola, porque sí son mujeres que están alimentando a otras personas. Y al final de cuentas son mujeres que tienen los mismos escasos recursos económicos que los migrantes.
¿Y dónde y cómo pagan para toda la comida?
Es que estaba esperando un poco a que...
Okay, so he says that question is a good segue from the point that I was making regarding the important role that women played in nourishing people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Y lo importante es justo que todo es a partir de voluntariado. Ellas no tienen una organización, una asociación civil. Normalmente no recibían fondos económicos, sino que más bien era la misma gente la que les llevaba los alimentos y la ropa para los migrantes.
And so these women were all volunteers, and they did not have any funds to do this work. They depended on their community members, their neighbors, to bring in the food that was needed as donations, as well as some of the clothing and water. So it was all a volunteer effort.
Great. People were also wondering if the women, if the patronas were able to see the film and what their reaction to the film was.
Good question.
Para ellas fue fue una película muy complicada porque ellas estaban acostumbradas a ver películas donde el protagonista o el eje del tema siempre es el migrante y no las patronas. Entonces fue una película que les costó mucho trabajo porque se reconocieron entre ellas y se reconocieron como grupo, y eso fue complicado que ellas pudieran entenderlo, porque ellas eran importantes y no los migrantes.
So it was a very complicated movie to make because La Patronas were used to seeing films where really the film was about the immigrant and not about them and their work. And so it was a challenge as they learned to see themselves as the main characters of the film. And that made it very complicated to make.
Thank you. Maybe Juan Pablo and Liz, maybe you all could answer this one. People are wondering if migrants are still traveling on the Beast, if either of you know during the time of COVID, if that's still happening, and if the situation is still similar in terms of what people experience.
Yes, I'm going to answer that. Yes, people still do it. But remember, and the Beast not only traveling immigrants, also traveling people from the Mexico, between Mexico. So it's used like a cheap, non-paying transport, so they use it. So no, yes, they still do it.
It's like a Metro North.
Yeah, like a Metro North. They use it. Exactly. So they use it normally. So
you.
it's regular.
Okay, thank you. Liz, you might be able to answer this one. Can you talk about when people arrive at the southern border today, so not in the previous administration, but if they arrive at the southern border today under the new administration, has anything changed? What kind of options does somebody have?
Yes, so they can present themselves to the port of entry, and then they'll be able to have an interview to see if they have a reasonable fear. And if they are determined to have a reasonable fear, they'll be able to pursue an asylum application within the United States. But it is still difficult, even, under this administration, because asylum law is very restrictive, and individuals need to be able to prove that they have a fear that they'll either be tortured or persecuted if they're returned to their home country. There are some exceptions to that rule. Maybe for young people specifically, there are some other forms of relief, but generally those are the rules. And so it's a very high standard for individuals to meet.
Thank you. A separate question that just came in, Liz. Are victims of domestic violence considered for asylum? Somebody wanted to know.
That's a great question. So before the Trump administration, they were individuals who were fleeing domestic violence situations were allowed to seek asylum in the United States. There were significant changes under the Trump administration where that ruling has been overturned. And generally, under asylum law, it's very difficult at this point for domestic violence victims and survivors to obtain asylum. It does still happen, but it's much more difficult after there was the change in case law. So that's one of the things that we're hoping will change under the Biden administration, and that he'll have the ability to change that case law back to what it was before the Trump administration.
All right, and one more legal question came in, so I'm going to throw one more at you, and then I'll go back to somebody else. Do you have any news about the Trump contract with ICE, that the ICE union that passed at the last minute that prevents the changing their work? It was kind of stopping Biden, you know?
Yes, I don't have any updates about that at this point. You know, we're still very hopeful that the Department of Homeland Security has a lot of very smart attorneys and individuals, as does the administration. And so we're very hopeful that they will find a way to get around that agreement, and that, you know, possibly there will be some litigation around that as well. So I don't have any updates just yet, but we are still hopeful that, you know, that won't be a problem in the future. We'll see.
Thank you.
And Katie, maybe do one or two more questions,
Sure.
and we'll finish up for the night. Thank you.
Great. For Arturo, people were wondering if you had any update on the women, if they're still doing this kind of work, if you know what's happening with them today.
Sí, su trabajo ha cambiado muchísimo desde la vez que yo filmé por primera vez.
Their work has changed considerably since when he last filmed them.
Cuando yo estuve ahí, y como lo pudieron apreciar en la película, el flujo de migrantes arriba del tren era de 400, 600 personas por tren.
When I was there, and as you can tell from the film, there were about 400 to 600 people on each train.
Y en el gobierno de Enrique Peña Nieto, que terminó su administración como presidente en el 2018, hubo un posicionamiento en contra de los migrantes con nuevas leyes que les impedía subir arriba del tren.
And the former government, which ended in 2018, had put in place some restrictions, significant restrictions on riding the train.
Entonces los migrantes empezaron a caminar por toda la vía del tren, y el trabajo de las patronas se ha transformado muchísimo porque ahora atienden a migrantes que vienen caminando con heridas muy graves en los pies.
And so the migrants started walking, and the work of the patronas has changed considerably because people are now coming to them for help with significant injuries on their feet and their legs.
Lo que resultaba ser una zona donde se proporcionaba alimentos por parte de las patronas, se empezó a convertir en un albergue donde los migrantes heridos se tenían que quedar ahí por varias semanas hasta recuperarse de las heridas.
And so the area where the patronas live has been converted to a place where people come and have to stay for long periods of time as they heal from the injuries that they have from walking.
Y eso ha complicado el trabajo de las patronas hoy en día porque se ha transformado justamente en donde ellas tienen que tener ahora conocimientos básicos de enfermería para poderlos atender, o de medicina.
And so this has complicated the work of La Patrona so significantly because they've had to transform their work from the cooking that they were doing now to more first aid type skills.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I think that's probably a good question for us to end on. Yeah, Kathleen?
Yes, I think that is. Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you to everybody. Thank you so much, Arturo, and to Juan Pablo, and to Carola, and to Liz. Just really appreciate everything that you came tonight. And here's the screen that Katie is sharing, and this is how you can join Neighbors Link's mailing list to stay informed of advocacy and volunteer opportunities, and to make a donation. So thanks everybody. Hope to see you probably in early April. We'll be doing the films in conjunction with the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. So thank you so much for coming, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Arturo. Gracias. Bye, Juan Pablo.
Señora Carola, un gusto de
Bye
conocerte.
bye.
Un gusto
Bye,
verte,
Arturo.
Juan Pablo. Mil gracias por tu tiempo.
Gracias a
Good
usted.
night. Thank you.
Good
Good night, everybody.